Been sober 25 years as of May 22nd, last week. I ended up going to the Betty Ford Center, and I went through the outpatient program there and found a new way to live. My role in the organization with Betty Ford Center, I have one primary objective, and that's to help alumni stay connected in their recovery and connected to the Betty Ford Center. RAVs, which is an acronym for Regional Alumni Volunteers, and these volunteers are all alumni from the center. They have taken what they've learned in treatment and they've applied it in their lives. They work a 12-step program. They work with a sponsor. They go to meetings, and they're able to give back the gifts they've been so freely given. And that's where the joy and the happiness comes from in our recovery. The greatest gift for me is my association with these volunteers. We started with 12, the next year was 18, then we were at 30, and today we have 90 volunteers all across North America. Each one has a responsibility each year of delivering one or two recovery activities, whether it's delivering a grief recovery program or helping host a Back to Basics step workshop on the weekend. They may help develop and sustain a chapter meeting with their commitments. They're there waiting for alumni when they return to meet them in the first 24, 48 hours, take them to coffee, help them work the steps, introduce them to people in the program. We hold social events because a lot of the work they do and deliver is the maintenance of recovery and helping them do some of the deep work that's necessary to stay sober. It's not all glum stuff. It's about being happy, joyous, and free, and that we can have a good time and play and in sobriety. I believe the gratitude is overwhelming. When people come in and they tell the stories, and you've heard many of them, the stories of what happens when people leave treatment and they're in the world and how families come back together. We deliver hope to people. We deliver the hope and the possibility of freedom and happiness. And I knew it was Mrs. Ford's dream. She told us in the very beginning that she had the dream that one of those great legacies she will leave behind is the alumni services and the care for the alumni. The last 7 years it's accelerated and it's taken on a life of its own. We couldn't stop it if we wanted to now. So we plant the seed and then it just grows and spreads. She's changed the world. And those ripples just keep rolling out and rolling out. Sometimes they're small, little, graceful waves, and sometimes they are huge waves of recovery. And the world will never be the same.
And you've been sober for how long?
Since September 28th, 2006. Basically, I surrendered when I walked through the doors and put myself in their care and really did what I was supposed to do. I listened and took direction. And shortly after I got there, it was recommended that I do RDT, so I signed up for another 30 days. And then I had a lot of aftercare and things like that, and I've followed through with everything that they asked me to do. So I'm sober today. I'm actually an RAV, a regional area volunteer. I believe 14 of us in the desert, and we're growing, and 90 or something across the country. It allows me to help other alcoholics, and it helps keep me sober. And my particular service is Back to Basics. And the first Back to Basics workshop that I did, we had 35 women, 7 of which were Al-Anon. We talked a little bit earlier about the family involvement in Al-Anon, and they did the workshop with us, taking the steps. And 2 days ago, I just completed our second series, and 25 women did the 12 steps. A significant amount of women that are interested in doing the steps, and this way of doing it is just, for me, it's just a great way to introduce the beginners to, and others, beginners and those that have lengths of sobriety to enhance their sobriety. It's a wonderful process. Basically, Wally P. took the beginner's format that was done in the 1940s by the founders of AA, and he wrote this book called Back to Basics, and it's there's a little history involved, which I personally like. I like to know where it came from, and it's all from the big book. It's all working the steps directly from the big book.
Susie Hobson, SUSIE Hopson. I'm a regional alumni volunteer for the Betty Ford Center, and I am from Dana Point. My husband had just returned from a golf vacation with sober people, and he was at a meeting, and instead of going to the meeting, he decided to come home and make me dinner that night. My husband came home to make me dinner, and within 15 minutes I was on the floor. And he called the paramedics. The paramedics came, they got me to the hospital, and they basically pronounced me dead. And my husband said, no, this is not gonna happen. And he got on the phone, called my heart surgeon. My heart surgeon came down from Oceanside and just told my husband to take a chill pill or be careful, and he would help. He would help. Just, don't worry, Ed, don't worry. And what happened was, when I was in a coma, this was the week that the regional alumni volunteers met. And I had plans to come, and it was one of the anniversary weekends. And it was 2 years ago, so it was the 23rd anniversary weekend. And during this event, Leonard made this announcement and said, Susie's in the hospital, Susie's in a coma, let's pray for Susie. And within 3 days, I came out of that coma. And I thoroughly believe in the power of prayer. And I've seen it happen several times, attending these regional alumni volunteers with several people in the program, and us praying for them. They're on their deathbed, and they're here. They're here today. I got sober out here December 2nd, 1988, and they didn't have all this wonderful stuff that we have today. And the Regional Alumni Volunteer Group has been going on for about 7 years, I think. And we started our chapter meeting 5 years ago. And I wasn't quite as active with calling, and now I see the importance of how it is so that we do stay in contact with the center. I love Betty Ford. I love the center. I love everything about it. I love the people. The continuity of it, and also the people that work for the center, they never leave. It's the same people. So I just love Betty Ford. I love you, Betty Ford.
It's E-R-M-A-N-N-O, and the last name is 3 words because I'm a megalomaniac. It's D as in David, I, F as in Frank, E-B-O, dash O-R-S-I-N-I. I was at the center about 5 years ago. I zipped through a 28 days program in 3 months flat, and I was there for a record 87 days in May. That was not my first treatment. I've been in treatment so many other times that I was so sure that I would have failed. A healthy dose of fear was what saved my ass the last time around. There is a statement that I made 3 years ago in a rare moment of intuition that has been resonating a lot with me, and I hear from other people, and is that I found in the 12-step program a new house, a new home, and the Betty Ford Center is the kitchen of such a place. It's the warmest place of the whole recovery house, and that's how the Betty Ford Center helps me, because it's a step ahead. Is another level. It's a deeper awareness of our wonderful recovery program. And it made me like my disease, This is Raphael, is my son, and this is an unusual beast for this environment. His characteristic is that he's one of us in recovery, and he's going to tell you about that. But he was in the children program at the Betty Ford Center when I was a patient there. That was 2003,
yeah.
And you were 11, right?
12, yeah.
Almost 12. And he went through the children program, and it's very important for me to remember that I did not want him to go to the children program. I want to protect him from this disease. Therefore, I wanted to lie to him about it. And I finally capitulated to the will and the suggestion of the center, and when they insisted that would have been for his best and for our best for him to go, I reluctantly said yes. And 5 years later, it turns out that probably was the most safe life decision we ever made, but he can tell you about it.
Wow. After a while, I started finding myself in the disease myself. I started experimenting, and I, within a matter of time, a short period of time, I found myself behaving in these behaviors that I saw in my father while I was growing up, and the center kind of helped me identify that right away before the problem would get way out of hand. And it was like, when I found myself in a problem, I knew where to go for help. I knew.
Where'd you go?
Well, I did not go to the Betty Ford Center because I was too young to attend. I went to another rehab that was 12-step based. And after that, I went to an outpatient program for 90 days, which helped a lot. And I got commitments at meetings. I got a sponsor right away. And, I just kind of did what I was told, what I was suggested by other people in recovery that had more time than me.
Raphael is 16 years old and he has 13 months of recovery. I learned about this disease in my 40s. I don't know what would have happened to me if I learned. Probably by now I would walk on this pool if I learned about the disease so much early in life. And I am sure that helped. I remember I would have never gone to my father telling him about my disease issues because I thought was not a cool thing to do. I thought I thought it was my fault. I thought I let him down. And I'm sure that going to the children program with Jerry Moe enabled Rafi to see through the disease lies and the disease deception, and I'm sure still reluctantly, but I'm sure that he came to me more freely than he would have done without that experience.
Yeah, and I can say that, before my father was kind of like an enemy, there was like a power struggle sort of thing, and now it's more like we're on the same page, we're both in recovery. Well, actually, you know what? It was a great relief when I found out that he was on drugs, because if he wasn't, I would have just thought that he was, but he's a great person, and that great person was covered by this mask that, that of the drugs, and the alcohol. So I'm glad, because before I just thought he was normally like this, I go to a lot of meetings, a lot of times it doesn't even matter whether it's an AA meeting or an NA meeting, as long as I can go there and I'm around people that I can relate with, and I know they can understand, when I say things that I wouldn't say to the average person.
But my world kept becoming smaller and smaller, and by the end of my run, the people that I was hurting was just my family, because we're the only one around. I think that the star is Mrs. Ford, and she's shining her light, and we are all her planet, and we are trying to shine back to other people her light. We bounce it off, we are mirrors, and the closer I am to the center, the more light I get, and that's why I keep coming back here.
I learned that I didn't cause the disease, I couldn't control the disease, and I couldn't stop the disease. I learned that I needed to look at myself and within myself to become a better person and a healthier person, and in turn, that might benefit my alcoholic.
How did it end up?
Well, I didn't have to live with the disease if I didn't want to. And I was worthy of having a good life, and I deserved a good life. I'm on RAV for Toronto. I've started a chapter there 6 years ago, and I find that I need to go to Al-Anon. I need to continue giving service, because that's the only way that will keep me healthy and will keep me in control of myself, rather than trying to control others and trying to change others, because I do have a tendency to do that. So that made me become a better mom, a better friend, better colleague, and has given me a second chance to life, because I realized that I was just as sick as the alcoholic without the drink. Just fell into it naturally. Leonard was in town one year, I'd say in about 2001. He came for a dinner and had all the alumni come out, and we chatted and talked, and I think he felt my passion. He seen that how much it changed my life, and he just spoke to me and he said, how would you feel of getting a few of the alumni together and starting a chapter? And I didn't think anything of it. I just said, yeah, I have no problem doing that. That'd be awesome. And I did this for quite some time you know, I never would have believed that a family would have to get involved. At the beginning, I thought it was all the alcoholic's fault, and they're the reason for the dysfunction of a family or breakdown of a family. And it's really the other way around, because a family member needs to get involved, not only to help themselves, which is a very big part of it. We as codependents or enablers, we add to the stresses and to the whole situation of what's going on with the alcoholic. And by in turn, sometimes we make the alcoholics or create the alcoholics to become worse than they are by, you know, fixing things all the time and not allowing God to step in and take over. Grief recovery is for anyone. And I've had people go through it that just have lost their son in an accident, or their daughter, a couple, their daughter was hit by a car on a trip. It's really for everyone, because we have grief in our life every day, whether it's moving to a new house, that's a sort of grief, or having your children grow up and move out of the house, that's another type of grief. Just from the bottom of my heart, I thank you immensely for what you've done for this world. Through the children's family program, for family program, although I'm not with my alcoholic, I feel that I've persevered, and I have a life today that has given me more than I could have ever imagined. And at one time, all I ever wanted was to have the alcoholic sober and in my life. And I have peace. And thank you. I thank you for that.
Thank you.
I actually arrived at the Betty Ford Center on November 3rd of 2003, and I went through their outpatient programs. And I have a purpose. I got involved immediately with the center right after graduating. When I had the Friday night meetings at the center when I was inpatient, or actually outpatient, they'd have meetings where they'd bring in alumni, and I saw these ladies up there, and I wanted everything that they had. I've been volunteering there for the last 4 years, being a secretary of the children's program, The Family, when my daughter sat there in the room with me, among other families, and having her pour her heart out, and telling me in tears how much she wanted her mommy back, and how much she wanted her mommy to look like the mommy she used to have. And that was moving. That was the pivotal point of my recovery immediately. Being a regional area volunteer, I've also developed a program where we bring in holidays to the patients. And it is a very emotional time for patients, not only being there, but being there at a holiday time without their family and loved ones. Of how much these little things that we do, we may think they mean nothing, bringing Valentine's cards or decorating an Easter egg, has a powerful impact on them. It also shows them, for them, when they get out of the center, to be a service. I've also started a Back to Basics workshop. I'm doing that right now. And thank you, Betty. Thank you, Mrs. Ford, for giving me my life back, for giving me purpose, for helping me be the mom that I've always wanted to be to my daughter. And thank you for allowing me to have my daughter in my life and to help others. And I will be forever grateful.
Thank you.
It's an LA contact. The contact out of the center was someone I would call, or who would call me after I called her, and then they would take me to a meeting within 24 to 48 hours. And she did that. And it was hugely important to me, because I tend to be an isolator and a procrastinator and basically just lazy. So she got me to go to the meeting, and I'm still going there. So
I keep hearing this term chapter meeting.
well, we have Betty Ford meetings that are in the area where you live. Sometimes it's not as close as you'd like, but I drive probably close to an hour to get to the LA meeting, because I live in Redondo Beach. And the LA chapter meeting is a meeting in Los Angeles. We have speaker meetings Wednesday nights And after the speaker has done sharing, we have a small break, and then the speaker picks a topic, and then we share on that topic. And it's a fabulous meeting. It's from 7 to 8:30 Wednesday night, so come on down. The Betty Ford Center was very important to me and always will be. It's where I found myself again. It's where I became a sober mother, sober wife, a sober daughter, sister, a sober self. It's where I started to love myself again. It's where I started to become, I felt like I became a child again. I surf, I boogie board. I teach art. My daughter is so lucky, and I am so lucky to have the Betty Ford Center. So grateful. My father passed away 2 years ago, and if it wasn't for this lady, this great lady, Betty Ford, starting this center, I wouldn't have been there for my dad when he died. And I wouldn't have been there as a sober daughter. And I got to hold his hand and see him pass with all my siblings and my mom, and they were married 50 years. So, you know, what a gift. I owe this center and her a lot. So I feel very, very grateful coming back here, and I can maybe help another alcoholic, another female alcoholic. So.
I've been in recovery since 1999, 9 years. March 5th, 1999, I came to the Betty Ford Center. I had been told that before I left the center that I had to call someone back in Oregon and to ask that person. Her name was Sharon. And the day after I got home, Sharon met me at the door of what we call the Firehouse in Lake Oswego, Oregon. And I went into that AA meeting, my first AA meeting ever. I would refuse to go to AA when I was at the center. I didn't think I needed it. But by the time I was through, I thought,